It was a crisp autumn afternoon when Eleanor Parker first met Sam. The vibrant hues of red and orange leaves fluttered gently to the ground, a perfect contrast to the gray sky above. Eleanor, a 48-year-old divorcée, was in the midst of her annual tradition, preparing her garden for the winter. Her hands were deep in the soil, pulling out the last remnants of summer flowers, when she heard the sound of a car door closing nearby. She looked up, wiping the dirt from her hands on her worn gardening apron, and saw a young man standing at the edge of her driveway. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a ruggedly handsome face that was softened by a warm smile. His dark hair was tousled by the wind, and his eyes sparkled with a hint of mischief. Eleanor felt a strange flutter in her chest, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. "Hi there," the young man called out, his voice carrying over the rustling leaves. "Are you Eleanor Parker?" She nodded, still taken aback by his sudden appearance. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you with something?" "I'm Sam," he said, extending a hand as he approached. "Sam Matthews. I'm renting the house next door for a few months while I work on a project in town. Just wanted to introduce myself." Eleanor took his hand, noticing the firmness of his grip and the warmth of his skin. "Nice to meet you, Sam. Welcome to the neighborhood." He smiled again, and Eleanor couldn't help but notice the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Thanks. It's a beautiful area. I'm looking forward to spending some time here." She offered a polite nod, trying to ignore the strange pull she felt toward him. "Yes, it is. Very peaceful, especially this time of year." As they chatted briefly about the town and the upcoming winter, Eleanor found herself stealing glances at Sam. There was something about him that intrigued her, something more than just his good looks. He was confident but not arrogant, friendly but not overbearing. It was refreshing to talk to someone who seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. Over the next few weeks, Sam and Eleanor saw each other often. It was impossible not to, living next door to one another. Sam would wave as he left for work in the mornings, and Eleanor would smile and nod in return. Sometimes they would exchange small talk over the fence, discussing the weather or sharing gardening tips. Each interaction, however brief, left Eleanor with a strange mix of excitement and guilt. She hadn't felt this way about anyone since her divorce 5 years ago. At first, she tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just a harmless crush, a fleeting attraction that would soon fade. But as the days went on, she found herself thinking about Sam more and more. She would catch herself daydreaming about him while doing mundane tasks, imagining what it would be like to spend more time with him, to know him better. One Saturday afternoon, as Eleanor was raking leaves in her backyard, she heard the familiar sound of Sam's voice behind her. "Need some help with that?" She turned to find him standing there, hands in his pockets, looking as handsome as ever. "I wouldn't want to impose," she said, though the idea of spending time with him was undeniably appealing. "It's no imposition at all," he replied with a grin. "Besides, I could use the exercise." Eleanor hesitated for a moment before nodding. "All right, if you insist." They worked side by side, the rhythm of raking leaves providing a comfortable backdrop to their conversation. They talked about everything and nothing: how Sam's project was going, Eleanor's favorite recipes, the upcoming holidays. With each passing minute, Eleanor felt more at ease, her initial nervousness fading away. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard, they paused to admire their work. "Looks like we've got it all done," Sam said, leaning on his rake. "Thanks for letting me help out." "Thank you," Eleanor replied, her heart pounding in her chest. It was nice to have some company. Sam looked at her then, his gaze lingering a bit longer than usual. "You know," he began, his voice softer now, "I really enjoy spending time with you, Eleanor. You're easy to talk to, and I feel like we've become friends." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. Friends. The word felt both comforting and disappointing. She had hoped for more, but she knew it was foolish. He was young, probably in his early 30s, and she was almost 50. What could he possibly see in her beyond friendship? "Friends," she echoed, forcing a smile. "Yes, I feel the same way." But as they stood there, the silence stretching between them, Eleanor felt something shift. The air around them seemed charged with unspoken tension, a current of electricity that neither of them acknowledged but both felt. It was Sam who finally broke the silence. "Maybe we could have dinner together sometime," he suggested, his tone casual, but his eyes intense. "Just as friends, of course." Eleanor hesitated, her mind racing. She knew what this could lead to, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. But the thought of spending more time with Sam, of seeing where this connection might go, was too tempting to resist. "I'd like that," she said softly, her heart pounding in her chest. They settled on the following Friday night, and as the day approached, Eleanor found herself growing increasingly anxious. She spent far too much time picking out an outfit, finally settling on a simple black dress that she hoped was both elegant and understated. She didn't want to appear as though she was trying too hard, but she also wanted to look her best. When Sam arrived at her door, he was carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of wildflowers. "I wasn't sure what kind you liked," he said with a sheepish grin, handing her the flowers. "So I just picked these up." Eleanor smiled, touched by the gesture. "They're beautiful, thank you, and wine is always welcome." They settled into a comfortable rhythm as they ate, the conversation flowing easily between them. Eleanor was surprised by how much they had in common, despite the difference in their ages. Sam was well-read and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that made her laugh more than she had in years. As the night wore on and the wine flowed, the atmosphere grew more relaxed, the conversation turning from lighthearted banter to more personal topics. Sam talked about his family, his struggles to find his place in the world, and the pressures he felt to live up to expectations. Eleanor found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected, sharing stories of her failed marriage, her fears of growing older, and the loneliness that had settled in after her divorce. The more they talked, the more Eleanor realized how much she had missed having someone to confide in, someone who genuinely cared about what she had to say. She felt a connection with Sam that went beyond mere attraction. It was a deep, almost spiritual bond that she hadn't felt in years. When dinner was over, they moved to the living room, where they continued their conversation on the couch. Sam sat close to her, their shoulders almost touching, and Eleanor could feel the warmth radiating from his body. She tried to ignore the fluttering in her chest, the way her heart seemed to race whenever he looked at her with those intense, dark eyes. At some point, the conversation lulled, and they were left sitting in silence, the only sound the soft crackling of the fire in the hearth. Eleanor's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, desire, longing, fear, and doubt all swirling together in a dizzying mix. She knew what was happening, what was about to happen, and she wasn't sure if she should stop it or let it unfold. Sam was the one who finally broke the silence. He turned slightly on the couch to face her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to read her thoughts. "Eleanor," he began, his voice low and hesitant, "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I need to be honest with you." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Sam?" He hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "I know we said we were just going to be friends, but I can't stop thinking about you. I've never met anyone like you before, and I don't know, maybe it's crazy, but I feel something here, something I haven't felt in a long time." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She had suspected that he might feel something for her, but hearing him say it out loud was both thrilling and terrifying. She wanted to respond, to tell him that she felt the same way, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat. Sam took her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. "I don't want to ruin what we have, and I know this might complicate things, but I just had to tell you. You mean a lot to me, Eleanor." For a moment, Eleanor didn't know what to say. She could feel the weight of the decision before her, the choice to either step back and maintain the safety of their friendship, or to take a leap into the unknown, risking everything for the chance at something more. She looked into Sam's eyes, searching for answers, and what she saw there made her decision for her. There was no hint of deceit or manipulation, no sign that he was merely interested in a fleeting affair. His feelings were genuine, and she could see the vulnerability in his expression, the way he was putting his heart on the line. Slowly, she leaned in, closing the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if testing the waters, but it quickly deepened as the emotions that had been simmering between them finally bubbled to the surface. Sam's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer, and Eleanor felt herself melt into his embrace, all her doubts and fears evaporating in the heat of the moment. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless, their foreheads resting together as they tried to steady their racing hearts. Eleanor's mind was a whirl of emotions: relief, exhilaration, and a deep, overwhelming sense of rightness. This was where she was meant to be, and she knew now that she couldn't turn back. "Sam," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've been feeling the same way. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just a crush, but I can't deny it anymore. I care about you, more than I've cared about anyone in a long time." Sam's smile was soft, but his eyes burned with intensity. "I'm glad to hear that," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because I care about you too, Eleanor, more than I thought possible." They kissed again, this time with more urgency, more need. The tension that had been building between them for weeks finally snapped, and all the emotions they had kept bottled up came flooding out in a rush of passion. Eleanor felt like a dam had burst inside her, all the loneliness and longing she had buried for years finally being released. Their hands roamed over each other's bodies, exploring, caressing, as if trying to memorize every inch of each other. Eleanor marveled at the way Sam's touch seemed to ignite her skin, sending shivers down her spine and making her pulse race. She had forgotten what it felt like to be touched like this, to be desired, and the sensation was almost overwhelming. As their kisses grew more heated, Sam gently guided her down onto the couch, his body covering hers. Eleanor's mind was a blur, all rational thought drowned out by the sheer intensity of the moment. She knew that this was wrong, that it would complicate everything, but she couldn't bring herself to care. All that mattered was the way Sam made her feel, the way he made her feel alive again. They made love there on the couch, the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls, the world outside forgotten. It was a raw, passionate connection, one that left them both breathless and trembling. Eleanor felt like she was on the brink of something new, something terrifying and beautiful all at once. Afterward, they lay together in the dim light, their bodies entwined, hearts still pounding in the aftermath of their shared passion. Sam stroked her hair, his touch gentle and soothing, and Eleanor felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice filled with concern. Eleanor nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "More than okay," she whispered, resting her head against his chest. "I don't regret any of it, Sam. Not for a second." He sighed in relief, holding her a little tighter. "I'm glad to hear that. I was worried. I didn't want you to feel pressured or—" "Shh," she interrupted, placing a finger over his lips. "I wanted this as much as you did, maybe even more." They lay in silence for a while, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the room. Eleanor's mind wandered, thinking about what this meant for them, for their future. She knew that things would be different now, that their relationship had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But as she lay there in Sam's arms, she couldn't bring herself to worry about it. For the first time in years, she felt truly happy, and she wasn't going to let anything ruin that. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, the early light of dawn filtering through the curtains. She stretched languidly, savoring the warmth of the bed and the memory of the previous night. It felt like a dream, one she didn't want to wake from. But when she turned to her side, expecting to find Sam still asleep beside her, she was met with an empty space. Her heart sank slightly as she realized he was gone. She sat up, pulling the blankets around her, and noticed a note on the pillow next to her. "Eleanor, I didn't want to wake you. You look so peaceful. I just wanted to thank you for last night. It was incredible. I've never felt so connected to someone before, and I'm so grateful that we found each other. I had to leave early for work, but I'm hoping we can spend more time together soon. I can't stop thinking about you. Yours?" Sam Eleanor smiled as she read the note, a warm glow spreading through her chest. She held the note to her heart, feeling a sense of reassurance. Despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, she knew that what they had shared was real, and that they would figure things out together. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. They spent more time together, sometimes at Eleanor's house, sometimes at Sam's. They talked for hours, sharing their hopes and fears, their pasts and dreams for the future. It was a time of discovery, of learning each other's quirks and idiosyncrasies, and the more they learned, the more they fell for each other. But with the growing intimacy came the inevitable complications. Eleanor began to worry about what people might think if they found out about their relationship. She was nearly 20 years older than Sam, and while age had never been an issue between them, she knew that others might not be so understanding. One afternoon, as they sat together on her porch, sipping tea and watching the leaves fall, Eleanor voiced her concerns. "Sam," she began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about us, about what people might say if they found out." Sam looked at her, his brow furrowing in concern. "What do you mean?" I'm worried about the age difference. I'm worried that people will judge us, that they'll think it's inappropriate." Sam set his cup down and took her hand in his. "Eleanor, I don't care what people think. I care about you, about us. That's all that matters to me." She smiled at his words, but the worry still gnawed at her. "But what if it becomes a problem? What if people start talking, start saying things behind our backs?" "Let them talk," Sam said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of what we have, and you shouldn't be either. We're both adults, and we have the right to be happy, no matter what anyone else thinks." Eleanor nodded, squeezing his hand. "You're right. I don't want to cause any trouble for you. You have your whole life ahead of you, and I don't want to hold you back." Sam's expression softened, and he leaned in to kiss her gently. "You're not holding me back, Eleanor. You're giving me something I never thought I'd find, real happiness, and I'm not going to let anyone take that away from us." His words comforted her, but the doubts still lingered. As much as she wanted to believe that they could make it work, she couldn't shake the fear that their relationship was built on borrowed time. She knew that Sam would eventually want more: marriage, children, a future that she couldn't provide. But for now, she chose to push those thoughts aside and focus on the present. She loved Sam, and he loved her. That was enough. As winter approached, their relationship faced its first real test. Sam's project was coming to an end, and he would soon have to decide whether to stay in town or move on to his next job. The thought of him leaving terrified Eleanor, but she didn't want to stand in the way of his career. One evening, as they sat together in front of the fire, Sam brought up the topic that Eleanor had been dreading. "I've been offered a new job," he said, his tone careful. "It's a great opportunity, but it's in another city." Eleanor's heart sank, but she forced herself to remain calm. "That's wonderful, Sam. I'm so proud of you." He looked at her, his eyes searching hers. "I haven't made a decision yet. I wanted to talk to you about it first." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I don't want to leave you, Eleanor. I love you, and I can't imagine being apart from you. But I also know this job is important, and I don't want to miss out on it." Eleanor's mind raced as she tried to process his words. This was the moment she had been dreading, the moment when she would have to choose between her love for Sam and his future. "You have to take the job," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't pass up this opportunity for me." Sam shook his head, his expression pained. "But what about us? I don't want to lose you." "You won't lose me," she said, fighting back tears. "We'll make it work. We can visit each other, call, video chat. We'll find a way." Sam's eyes filled with tears as he pulled her into his arms. "I don't want to say goodbye to you, Eleanor. I don't want to leave." "I don't want you to go either," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I can't ask you to give up your dreams for me. You have to take this chance." They held each other for a long time, neither wanting to let go. The reality of their situation was sinking in, and it was almost too much to bear. Finally, Sam pulled away slightly, his hands cupping her face as he looked into her eyes. "Eleanor, I love you. I want to be with you, no matter what it takes. We'll figure this out, okay?" She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love you too, Sam. We'll find a way." But as they kissed, the fear of the unknown lingered in the back of Eleanor's mind. She knew that this would be the hardest test their relationship would face, and she wasn't sure if they would come out on the other side. The next few weeks were a blur of emotion. Sam accepted the job, and they spent every moment they could together, trying to make the most of the time they had left. They talked about their plans for the future, how they would stay in touch, and the possibility of Sam moving back when the job was done. But as the day of his departure drew closer, the reality of their situation became harder to ignore. The uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on both of them, and Eleanor found herself struggling to hold back her fears. On the night before Sam was set to leave, they shared a final, bittersweet night together. They made love with a desperation that neither of them had felt before, as if trying to imprint the memory of each other on their souls. When it was over, they lay together in silence, holding each other as if afraid to let go. The next morning, Eleanor drove Sam to the airport, her heart breaking with each passing mile. They didn't talk much on the way, the weight of what was about to happen hanging heavily in the air. When they arrived, Sam turned to her, his eyes filled with emotion. "I'll come back to you, Eleanor, I promise." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They kissed one last time, and then Sam was gone, disappearing into the crowd of travelers. As Eleanor drove home, the loneliness hit her like a physical blow. The house felt empty without him, and the thought of going on without him was almost too much to bear. But she knew she had to be strong. She had to believe that their love was strong enough to withstand the distance, the time apart. She had to trust that Sam would keep his promise and that they would find their way back to each other. As the days turned into weeks, Eleanor found herself struggling to adjust to life without Sam. They talked on the phone every night, exchanged texts and emails, but it wasn't the same. The distance between them was palpable, and it took every ounce of her strength not to let it break her. She threw herself into her work, her hobbies, anything to keep her mind occupied. But no matter what she did, the ache in her heart remained. One evening, a few months after Sam had left, Eleanor received a package in the mail. Inside was a small, hand-carved wooden box and a note from Sam. "Eleanor, I found this at a market near where I'm staying. It reminded me of you, of the time we spent together, and I wanted you to have it. I miss you every day, and I can't wait to see you again. I'm counting down the days until we're together. Yours, Sam." Eleanor held the box in her hands, tears welling up in her eyes. It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world to her. It was a reminder that, no matter how far apart they were, Sam was still thinking of her, still holding on to their love. The weeks continued to pass, and slowly the ache in Eleanor's heart began to fade. She still missed Sam, but she had found a way to live with the distance, to find joy in the small things, and to hold on to the hope that they would be together again. And then, one day, as she was tending to her garden, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Need some help with that?" She turned around, and there he was, standing at the edge of the driveway, just as he had that first day. Sam had come back. Eleanor dropped her gardening tools and ran to him, throwing her arms around him as tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. "You're back," she whispered, barely able to believe it. "I told you I'd come back," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I couldn't stay away any longer. I love you, Eleanor. I want to be with you, for as long as you'll have me." Eleanor looked into his eyes, her heart swelling with happiness. "I'll have you forever," she whispered. And then they kissed, sealing their promise to each other. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Eleanor knew that the future was still uncertain, that there would be challenges ahead. But she also knew that their love was strong enough to face whatever came their way. And for the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt at peace. She had found love when she least expected it, and she was determined to hold on to it no matter what. Because in the end, love was all that mattered.